Hi everyone, I hope the latest edition of the Financial Planner finds you all safe and well and enjoying this glorious early summer that we seem to be having. I guess it takes the edge off what could be a more depressing period, I guess, with everything that's going on if it was chucking it down. So we take the positives where we can find them. On a continuation now of talking about recovery and the market itself, and of course how this lends into the things that we're seeing on the TV, from the extension of furloughing to people's predictions about where unemployment levels will go, and of course GDP, not only in the UK but of course globally across the world. We now think it's prudent for us to return back to some market and fund manager commentary. We've tried to cover off one of two specialist type planning ideas, and we're going to return to those and keep this moving throughout this COVID period. But I think a lot of people really appreciated getting in the mindset of a fund manager, understanding what their thought process is at this time, how they react to volatility, what they see as opportunity to buy, and what their thought process is over the next 6 to 12 months. Now, added to that, of course, we're in a world where people make bold predictions every given day. And we've said before to be very wary of this. Whilst we can look at history as some form of indicator of what's happened historically, and we talked about that in one of my earlier videos, we're now, of course, looking at the shape of recovery and how long that might take. Now, we talked about this previously, whether this might be an L-shaped recovery or a V-shaped recovery, which I guess most people would prefer, and whether this potentially might be a W-shaped recovery, or for that matter, any other alphabet letter you could probably imagine. And again, you'll get that many different opinions from that many different sources that I guess most people cover that many bases that I guess they'll tell you they were right, whatever happens in the long term. Our job's not to be in the position of trying to make bold predictions. It's again about good planning over the timescale you need the money for. But it's quite interesting at the minute, as many as you will have seen if you're looking at your wealth accounts and your investor return documents. And if you remember, we referred to these, and you can see an example again on screen now of how you can access these online so that you can view what your plans are currently doing. Now, as you can see in the example I'm showing you on screen now, you can see that over the last number of weeks, the market has of course shown some significant recovery. And you can see that in the very shape of the graph I'm showing you now from a real life client, and you can see how market optimism has come to the fore. Now, what you're getting is, of course, people asking the question of whether this is the start of a real recovery, and is, from a perspective of, can I be reassured now that things are only on the up? Or for new investors, is now the time to get my money in before I miss the real opportunity for real growth? Now, again, we've got to be very careful here, because back to my analogy of whether it's a U-shaped recovery, a W-shaped recovery, or a V-shaped recovery, etc., no one really knows. So just be very careful, I guess, what you're reading and what you're consuming in terms of any bold predictions being made. I think it's fair to say, looking at that shape of some recovery in the market, that some of that is, of course, caused by shorter term optimism. What causes that shorter term optimism is often to do with stimulant. Now, what we've seen in the UK, and of course have seen replicated around the world, but if we use our own country as an example, is the pumping of money into the system. Furloughing, as an example, is giving an indication of the government effectively borrowing at historic levels, because it's of course so cheap for them to do so, to pump and print money into the system to effectively hold up the economy. Now, in the shorter term, of course, that's papering over the cracks. What it ultimately does is says that everything will be okay and hopefully will return to normal. I don't think many people watching this video believe that that's ever going to be the case. I would imagine a vast number of people who are currently furloughed will actually never return, unfortunately, to the job that they are currently furloughed from. And that will be industry specific, of course. So we're going to have a significant rise in unemployment level, and I think that'll be replicated, of course, globally. But here's the key thing, and something I want to touch on moving forward, is the fact that that doesn't necessarily mean that that will have a direct correlation to your funds. And that's the bit that kind of hurts your head a little bit, and it does mine. Why would a potential period which we can see coming forward where unemployment will go up, GDP will come down, the country, using the UK again as an example, will not be as productive, but yet why would your investment portfolio potentially go the other way, buck the curve and start moving upwards and moving forwards? And a lot of the time that's to do with the fact that things like GDP and unemployment levels are what we class as lagging indicators. They are things that don't necessarily directly correlate to investment performance. They're important, of course, and I can hear people shouting at the screen now going, but we're going to have to pay this debt back. Absolutely, we're going to have to pay this debt back, and that's a whole different topic of conversation, whether that comes through income tax, inheritance tax, you name it. That's coming at some point in the future. But currently talking about the return of your investments to value of what you appreciated before, you're going to not necessarily see, like I said, a direct correlation between how the markets begin to recover and what you're still hearing as negative output on the news. And that again is to do with that chink of light, that prospect that the world is going to recover over a period of time. And don't forget, the market dropped so quickly overnight that wasn't realistic either. You know, the fact that the market didn't gradually go down as productivity went down, it dropped straight off a cliff edge. Now, if you look at that a different way, if it can drop so sharply, of course, it can recover with such sharpness as well. I don't believe necessarily it's going to do that over the shorter term, but there are indicators, of course, like we've referred to before, that the world will now find a way forward. And that's really important for us to stick to. Now here comes the great news, and I'm really pleased that we're able to do this, and I think this is a really good example of the value we can offer to you as a practice, is the accessibility to the people in the know. So I'm delighted today, and you can see on screen now that we have secured a live one-to-one session with Jack Mann, the Business Development Manager for our International Equity Fund. He's going to be doing a live one-to-one with anybody who wishes to attend on Tuesday the 9th of June at 10:30 a.m. in the morning. Now clearly, if you're tied up with work or other things at that time, we will absolutely record the session for you to be able to watch back. Anybody who's listened to Jack before will vouch for how great he is in terms of talking you through what a fund like International Equity is doing at this time. He's very approachable. He will talk about specific companies they've bought into, which companies they've got rid of in the portfolio, where they think they're going next over the next 6 to 12 months and beyond, where they think there's potential concern in the market, but equally where they think there's real opportunity. And this gives you the opportunity to ultimately hear it from the horse's mouth. Now, when we talk about what we do as a practice and what we pride ourselves on in, that's very different to a private investor, somebody who effectively picks a fund from a newspaper or effectively buys a fund online based largely on past performance, something that's done well, so therefore I'll have a bit of that, but never gets that interaction with the person who fundamentally is involved in running that fund. And here we go, the powers of modern technology means we're going to do that from Sydney, and you're going to get that independently done just for you as members of our practice. So I want as many of you as possible, please, to either watch that live. We're going to give you the opportunity beforehand to post specific questions so that Jack can pick those up during the actual conference, or actually listen to it afterwards, because genuinely, even if you're the most cynical person going, I won't understand what they're talking about, I don't want just high-level, highbrow stats and analytics and everything else, I just won't mean anything to me, I can assure you that's not Jack's approach, and that's not how it will come across. So I think everyone will get some value from that. Send your questions, importantly, in beforehand following this email, which will give you the opportunity to do that. And I think you'll find that hugely useful. We're then going to look to build these in forthcoming weeks with different fund managers from your portfolio, so that you've got every opportunity now to increase your understanding and knowledge of what fund managers are doing specific to your money. So with that in mind, thanks again for listening. I wish you all very well, of course, in terms of the next few weeks. Things are ever changing, of course, and I guess we're going to all be allowed out a little bit more and just err on the side of caution. Don't go to Durham, maybe. But joking aside, yeah, stay safe. Like I said, we all continue to be monitoring the situation together. Thank you again for everybody's input off the back of these videos. thank you equally for those people who are taking action, the number of people who have done the wills, powers of attorney off the back of these and are actively thinking about their planning structure coming through COVID-19 is great to see. So thanks for using a little bit of this downtime productively. Very much look forward to catching up with you again, and equally joining you with Jack Mann's conference from International Equity in Sydney. All the very best for now.